The stench of manure clung to the air like a curse, heavy and rank beneath a sky smeared with dying sunlight. Distant thunder rolled over the craggy hills of Veskara 3, a forgotten agricultural planet that barely registered on any civilized star map. But Captain Joran Cade hadn't come for sightseeing. He stumbled down the makeshift road, boot crunching on broken synth glass. His left arm hung limp, blaster shrapnel embedded near the elbow, and his ship, the Reliant, smoked somewhere behind him, a dying star in a junkyard of crops. Then he heard it. Not a sound from machines or creatures, but a whimper, a small, pained, human sound. He turned sharply toward a dilapidated barn surrounded by sagging fences. The pigs, pale, bulky, engineered for meat but oddly intelligent, shifted restlessly in the mire. In the middle of them, barely visible through the haze and muck, was a girl. She crawled on all fours. Her skin, once likely porcelain, was caked in brown and gray. Long red hair fell in matted strands over her face. She wore a torn smock, the kind used by labor-class indentured workers. But what struck Joran the most was what lay beneath all that filth. Her ears, long, elegant, tapered. Like a crescent moon, she was a Larian, royalty once. Now here, in a pen, crawling like livestock. "Hey!" he shouted. She froze. Slowly, she turned to look at him, eyes wild and animal bright. Her lips trembled. Her voice came out hoarse. "Don't touch me." Joran's military instincts told him to scan the area, call for extraction, move on. But his heart, the very thing that got him kicked out of the sovereign elite, made him step forward instead. "I won't hurt you." She backed into the mud. "I'm dirty, useless, shameful." He crouched just outside the sty's perimeter. "You're not any of those things. You're someone. What's your name?" "I don't remember," she said, voice cracking. "They took it. Beat it out of me." "I only answer to pig girl." Joran flinched like she'd slapped him. "Well, that's about to change." She blinked at him in confusion. With a grunt, he climbed into the pen. The pigs eyed him, snorting, but didn't move. They respected her, he realized, or feared her. Maybe both. Joran extended his hand. The girl stared at it. Her fingers twitched, hesitated, then slowly reached forward. When she touched him, her skin was ice. But beneath the cold was life, shivering, uncertain life. He pulled her into his arms. She didn't fight, didn't speak. Just clung to him like he was the last solid thing in a collapsing galaxy. He held her like she was precious. Because she was. The barn was dark, except for a faint blue glow from his wrist comm. Joran had patched his wound, scavenged dry blankets, and fed the girl, now cleaned up slightly, a ration bar soaked in warm water. She sat by a heater coil, wrapped in his spare jacket, staring into nothing. He knelt beside her. "Still can't remember anything?" She looked up, eyes more focused. Flashes, music, trees with violet leaves, a mother's voice, but nothing solid. "We'll figure it out," Joran said. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "Why did you help me?" "Because no one else did." A long pause. Then she said, "I think my name was Viola." The moment she spoke it, something shifted in her posture. Her back straightened. Her fingers curled into fists. "That sounds like a warrior's name," Joran said with a smile. "I wasn't a warrior," she whispered. "Not before, but maybe I'll become one." Suddenly his comm crackled. Unidentified human signal. "Detected. Sovereign patrol approaching," Joran cursed. Vela's face hardened. "They'll come for me." "Let them," he said, standing. "But they won't take you." She stood too. The pigs outside stirred again. Vela looked out the barn door. Her reflection glinted in a puddle. Cleaner now, but her eyes were different. Sharper. "They called me useless," she said. "Made me live with pigs. I was an Ilarian. Princess once." Joran raised an eyebrow. "Princess?" She looked at him with a faint smile. Let me prove it. The wind howled through the broken roof of the barn as Joran sealed the emergency panel on his wristcom. The signal had gone out. If the Sovereign Patrol was nearby, they'd be coming in fast. There wasn't much time. Vela stood quietly in the shadows beside him, his jacket too large for her thin frame. But her presence had changed. She wasn't just some frightened slave girl now. Something simmered behind her sea-glass eyes, like a storm beginning to rise. Joran reached for his blaster. We'll need to move. There's an old signal beacon, a few clicks west. If I can rewire it, I might call in an off-grid rescue. Viola didn't answer. She was staring at her hands, watching the faint shimmer of purple energy pulse beneath her skin, like veins of starlight waking after centuries of sleep. I feel strange, she whispered, like the dirt's still on me, but it's not part of me anymore, like it was never supposed to be. Joran paused. It wasn't. Her eyes flicked to him. Why do you keep looking at me like that? Like what? Like I matter. You do. She stepped closer, dirt cracking from her legs as dried mud flaked away. Everyone who touched me before, every master, looked at me like property, like something broken. You don't even know me. Why risk your life? Joran holstered the blaster and met her gaze. Because I know what it's like to be told you're worthless. I also know what it means to be given a second chance. Outside, the pigs squealed sharply. A burst of light filled the sky, crimson and silver. Joran grabbed her arm. That's a dropship, come on! They sprinted across the field, feet splashing through shallow puddles and dead grass. In the distance, 4 humanoid figures emerged from the haze, armor glinting with sovereign crests. Standard Enforcer units. Ilarian signature confirmed. One barked into a comms piece. Target Vela located. Proceeding with detainment. Vila. Froze. Joran raised his blaster, but she touched his hand. Let me. He gave her one brief, searching look, then nodded. Vela stepped forward, trembling. The Sovereign soldiers advanced, weapons humming. They didn't expect resistance. She was supposed to be weak. But then, her voice echoed, not loud, not angry, but full of something ancient. No. The earth around her cracked. From her feet, violet light surged, curling up her arms like vines of power. Her eyes burned with light. The sky seemed to ripple. The enforcers stumbled. Unknown energy surge, non-weaponized Ilarian flare. Joran backed up slowly, shielding his eyes as the blast hit. It wasn't a weapon. It was a rejection, a forceful disavowal of everything they'd done to her. Shame peeled off her like old skin. The energy dissipated. The soldiers stood stunned. 2 dropped their rifles. 1 ran. Viola turned to Joran, chest heaving. I didn't know I could do that. Joran blinked. Neither did they. They didn't stay long. The Sovereign might return with more. With tech that could suppress Ilarian gifts. They trekked toward the beacon tower, hidden in a grove of weeping fang trees, their leaves glinting blue in the half-light. Vila walked in silence, every step reclaiming a part of herself. When they finally reached the tower, Joran set to work bypassing its ancient encryption. Sparks flew, circuits hissed. Vela watched the stars overhead. Her voice, when it came, was soft. I wasn't always royalty. I was adopted into the bloodline after my world was annexed. The title never felt real. Joran didn't look up. It does now. She knelt beside him. When they took me, I begged to forget. I wanted to be nothing. He touched her face gently. You're not nothing. You're the most powerful being I've ever seen. And you still have more to become. She leaned in, slowly, carefully. And this time, when she touched him, it wasn't trembling. It was deliberate. Her lips brushed his. A promise. A question. A beginning. Before he could speak, the console beeped. Signal locked. Transmission sent. A reply came. Extraction incoming. 32 minutes. Hostiles on approach. Joran stood. They're coming. Vela's eyes narrowed. Then let them. I'm done crawling. They turned toward the hill, where shadows moved beneath the moonlight. Together, side by side, they waited. The first Sovereign scout came fast, his speeder parting the tall grass like a knife through water. Joran knelt by a rusted beam near the beacon tower, aiming his blaster with a steady hand. Beside him, Vela stood tall, her wild red hair lifted by the wind, her hands crackling faintly with violet energy she was still learning to control. Just one, Joran muttered. That's a probe. They're testing, Viola replied coldly. They don't believe I'm still alive. They think I'm just some broken remnant in the mud. The speeder halted, engine whining. The scout dismounted, armor matte black with a single green visor slit. Joran held his breath, but Vela stepped forward first. The scout lifted his weapon. Halt! Identify! Vela raised her palm. The ground around the scout shifted like liquid, roots erupting. From beneath the soil, they curled up his legs and torso, hissing with glowing heat, and before he could fire, he was yanked to his knees. She didn't kill him. She didn't have to. The scout screamed as the vines seared his suit and immobilized him in place, leaving only his trembling breath. Joran stared at her. That was advanced. I remembered, she said quietly. That's what Ilarians were. Keepers of living energy. Not weapons, not slaves. We were defenders. Another flash in the distance, not one speeder this time. 4. Dropships. Loomed overhead, engines rumbling like thunder. Too many, Joran muttered, fingers twitching near his belt. We need cover. But Vela didn't retreat. She turned to him, her voice calm. I'm not running. Joran stepped to her. We don't have to win this fight. We just have to survive until extraction. She stared at him. If we run now, I'll always be the girl who hid in the mud. I'd rather burn with you here than crawl away and forget. Joran saw it in her eyes then, resolve, raw and gleaming. Not born from pride, but from something deeper. Worth. Selfhood. Love. All right, he said softly. Then we burn together. They took position on the rocky ridge above the beacon tower. The first line of Sovereign troops disembarked, armed with stun batons and sonic rifles. They weren't expecting resistance until Vela dropped down in front of them. Target acquired, one shouted. Vela raised both hands and slammed them into the earth. A pulse exploded outward, blinding violet and white, like a sun being born. The shockwave tossed the first line of troops into the air, weapons sparking uselessly. Joran dove in, blaster hammering with surgical precision. 1, 2, 3, down. But more came. From the left ridge, armored exosuits stomped forward. Heavy infantry. Joran! Vela called. I see them! He tossed a plasma charge, ducked behind a boulder, then looked up to see Vela surrounded. Her energy dimmed with each surge. Her hands shook, her knees buckled. Too fast, she muttered, staggering. Joran ran toward her, shield raised, but not fast enough. One of the enforcers lunged at her. Viola screamed and unleashed something. Primal, not controlled, not elegant, but hers. A column of raw energy burst from her chest, a banshee's wail carried on power ancient and furious. The shockwave didn't just knock her attacker back, it dissolved the outer armor of his exosuit. He collapsed, writhing. Vela fell to her knees. Joran caught her, sliding beside her in the dirt. That was... I can't... Hold it, she whispered. You don't have to. I've got you. The beacon's console pinged. Landing craft ETA, 8 minutes, signal compromised, extraction site hot. Too long. The Sovereign commander emerged from the second dropship, taller than the rest. A cybernetic graft covered the left half of his face. "I see you found the runt," he sneered, leveling a rail cannon at Viola. "I remember her. Screamed like a rodent when we dragged her through the gates." Viola flinched. Joran rose slowly. "You'll never touch her again," the commander scoffed. "You think a washed-up rebel and a broken Ilarian matter?" Then Viola rose too, not with strength, with purpose, with light bleeding from every crack of her skin like molten stardust. "I am not broken," the commander fired. Viola didn't dodge. Instead, she held up a single hand. The blast froze mid-air, hovering as if the laws of physics bent to her will. With a twist of her fingers, the energy twisted into a helix, then slammed back into the gun, exploding in the commander's face. He dropped, unconscious. The troops hesitated. The earth trembled, and the pigs, hundreds of them, began emerging from the fields. Vela turned to the herd, raised a hand, and they responded, not like animals, but as one mind. They charged, not to kill, but to scatter the enemy, break their lines. It worked. By the time the landing craft descended, the sovereign troops were fleeing. Smoke curled from their wreckage. The pigs regrouped, surrounding Vela and Joran like silent sentinels. The hatch of the shuttle hissed open. A woman in silver armor stepped out, blinking at the scene. "We're here for extraction," she said. "Are you two the targets?" Joran looked to Vela. Vela looked to the stars. Then she whispered, "Not targets, survivors." Joran offered his hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. The sky split open as the extraction ship rocketed upward through the clouds, the flaming wreckage of the sovereign strike teams shrinking below them. Joran sat near the rear hull, his arm firmly around Viola, who rested her head against his shoulder, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion, but glowing faintly. The pilot looked back from the cockpit. "We're clear of their scanners. Estimated arrival at Vierex Station in 28 minutes. You've got time to breathe." Joran exhaled and turned to Viola. "How do you feel?" She smiled faintly. "Like I stopped hiding from myself." Silence stretched between them, not heavy, peaceful. The sterile interior of the ship flickered with soft lights. For the first time, Viola looked down at her hands not with shame, but curiosity. "They called me a weapon," she whispered. "Then a pet. Then a forgotten thing. But when I stood there in the mud, when I felt you wrap your arms around me, I remembered I was someone." Joran's jaw tightened. "You always were." She shifted to look at him. "I think I needed you to see me before I could see myself." He chuckled softly. "Then I'm glad I got lost in that goddamned mud field." They reached Vierex Station, just after dawn cycle. The orbiting port above the fractured moon buzzed with refugee transports and black market traders. The moment Viola stepped off the ship, her breath hitched. Open sky, clean air. Stars without bars between her and them. They were met by Commander Nirel, a grizzled older woman with a deep scar over her lip and cybernetic eyes. "So this is the girl that scrambled half a sovereign platoon and hijacked a field of livestock to do it," she said, nodding with approval. "Nice work, Red." Vela blinked. "That's not my name." Nirel smirked. "Doesn't have to be. You want to start over. This is the place. You've got talent, fury, power. You want to use it. We'll find a way." Vela looked to Joran, uncertainty flashing across her features. "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "But I know I don't want to be alone anymore." Joran stepped closer. "You won't be." That night, Viola stood on a balcony overlooking the vast hangar bay, watching people move below. Aliens, humans, hybrids, all rebuilding from war, all choosing something different. "I was so afraid," she said softly, as Joran came up behind her. "Afraid that if anyone saw the real me, they'd reject me, because all they'd seen before was filth and obedience." Touched her shoulder. "I saw someone who crawled through the dirt and still glowed like fire. I saw a girl who broke her chains without even knowing how. She turned, tears caught in her lashes. I didn't just survive, Joran. I became. They kissed under the humming stars. A week later, Viola stepped onto a mission cruiser not as a prisoner, but as an envoy. She wore her heritage openly now, tattoos of glowing Illyrian script winding down her arms, robes cut from the fabric of a dead empire she refused to let be forgotten. Joran walked beside her, newly assigned as her guard. Guarding me now are... You, she teased. Someone has to make sure you don't explode another field of pigs. She laughed, a sound that hadn't existed in her voice for years. But as they reached the loading bay, a message blinked on the overhead screen. Sovereign outpost detected. Location, Outer Rim mining colony. Classified experiments confirmed. Vela stared at it, her hand clenched slowly. They're still doing it. Joran watched her. What do you want to do? She didn't answer. At first. Then she lifted her head. I want to find every broken girl they've ever touched. I want to show them they're more than dirt. I want to remind them they are powerful. He nodded. Then we go. She looked over at him. Together. Always. And with that, they boarded the cruiser, leaving behind the station, the mud, the memory of captivity, replaced by purpose, love, and vengeance wrapped in starlight. The end. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made your heart. Race, let's create more together. Drop your next title, image, or wild idea, and I'll write your next HFY sci-fi romance adventure. Your next legend is waiting. Just say the word.